Hi, good evening. My name is Beth Lindy, and I am an attorney. My office is located in downtown Fort Lauderdale. I've been practicing for over 15 years, and I've been working for associations for about that long. I actually started doing more defense work. Hopefully you all have never had to deal with it, but if you end up where the association gets sued, very often your own insurance companies will provide you with a defense under your directors and officers policy for all sorts of types of cases, contract disputes, disputes with owners, disputes with vendors, all types of disputes. Not the injury ones. The injury ones are dealt with under your general liability policy, but just any kind of business dispute, employment matters. So that's really what I started doing originally, and I have actually brought a little information, and I can pass around some cards as well. And I believe I provided my contact information on the web, so you can look me up on the internet on my website. I'll provide this if you want to keep this as the just a little information. It's pretty similar to what you would find on the internet, and I'll pull out some cards as well. But so that's where I had started originally for my first couple of years. I was in court a lot for associations. And as a result, I learned a lot of the association law, because a lot of the disputes were with owners or over issues that would involve association law. And after a couple of years, the association started asking me, well, will you be our general counsel? We don't have counsel every once in a while. Or someone who knew that I was doing that kind of work would say, hey, I know somebody. And for some reason, for the first couple of years, I was not accepting them, but then I figured, why not? I've learned all of this law, and I might as well put that to good use. And it's proliferated ever since. So that would have probably been about '96, I want to say. So ever since then, I've just been building up a stable of associations. And the one thing that I would like to note is that those very first few associations that I started to represent, I still represent every one of them. Those first 3 or 4 that came in that first year. And the reason why I bring that up is because a very common thing that occurs with associations and their counsel is that there's a huge turnover. That as soon as the board leaves, so does all of the different vendors, including the attorneys. And very often it's because the people believe that the counsel is not working for the entity, but rather that the counsel is working for the particular board members. And my clients over the years have learned through board change after board change that my allegiance and my alliance is to the entity. And that's who I work for. I don't work for any individual board members or for a manager, even if a manager is the one who brings me in. But rather, I work for the entity. And as a result, sometimes I may say things that are, my opinion, that are not necessarily what the board wants to hear, but it's in their best interest, and it keeps them out of trouble usually if they listen. So I find that that's the best way to keep the longevity of the relationship. And if that means that I end up with less work because what I say results in less disputes or less litigation, so be it. My feeling is that I want to do what's best for the association. In fact, there have been times where I've been brought in by management, and then the management leaves or is tossed out, and I stay. And the reason being is because I then convince the new board by actions, not by words, but by actions, that I'm not there for that manager. I wasn't trying to do anything in their interest, but rather for whatever was the best interest of the association. As an example, I've even handled some of the insurance claims for some of my clients on an hourly basis as opposed to a contingency rate. And as a result, I have several clients who, when they had to deal with their Wilma claims, maybe don't even realize how good they had it, because when they resolved their claims with their carriers, they got to keep the money in their own pocket and only paid me by the hour. And I left it totally up to the clients to choose. And the benefit of that is that if they could afford to pay by the hour, why should they give up 20%, 30%, 40% to me for maybe not even accomplishing that much work? They needed the money to repair their buildings. And although some might say that wasn't a smart business move on my part, I think it was, because all of those clients are still my clients, whereas all of my clients who used counsel that just do insurance claims solely were all so upset with those counsel. They were, you know, they had some choice words for them, to me, to them, you know, considering even whether they had violated their ethical duties as counsel and were more interested in making money for themselves. So, and whether that's true or not, that's just the impression that they received because of the fact of how much of their money that they needed for repairs went to the counsel. Sometimes maybe it was true, sometimes maybe it was just a semblance of it, but I actually did handle some of those claims on an hourly because the clients requested it, and I like to accommodate my clients. I know that as associations, it's not for profit, so if you have to spend monies that you didn't expect to spend, whether it be for litigation or for just having counsel give you advice because you're concerned that there may be something that you're not doing right or you might not do right if you don't get advice, I know that that's not always money that you can budget for. And therefore it results in assessments. And so, you know, I do take into account the fact that it's different when I work for my condominiums associations and homeowners associations than if I work for for-profit corporations or for the insurance companies for that matter. You know, if an insurance company were to pay me to defend you, it's a lot different in terms of where the money is coming from. So I definitely keep that in mind and, you know, try to work with associations as best as I can. I do handle, as I said, general matters as well, but I know the question that I had received was about collections. And I had mentioned in the letter that I had sent on the email that the way I handle collections is similar to a lot of other attorneys, but in some ways very different. We also look at it as the fact that when you are handling collections, that it's not something that you want to do. You don't enjoy having to ask for money from your neighbors because they are your neighbors, sometimes your friends, sometimes even board members. And it's, you know, it's a difficult subject, particularly at this time in the economy, that everyone's having tough times. And the last thing you want to do is be demanding money from your neighbors, but unfortunately you have no choice. You have to here. If you don't collect against one neighbor, you can't collect against all of the others. You can't pay the bills here, keep the lights on, you know, so pay your insurance, which is extremely important. So I understand that. So when it comes to dealing with the owners, my office does not take the same attitude that a lot of the other firms do, which is we're afraid that the owners are going to say we said something we didn't. They're going to accuse us of violating the law, so we're not talking to them. My office takes the approach that if an owner calls up and has a question about their statement or why they haven't been given credit for something they think they've paid, we try to at least listen to them, provide them with their ledger if they need to see it again, provide them with, you know, whatever information that they need in order to work together. And if they are asking for some sort of a payment plan, if the board allows payment plans, to try to work with them. And the reason being is because we find that when we communicate with people, sometimes there are misconceptions or misunderstandings about what they're being charged, about whether they've been given credit, or even what the laws are about making payments. Sometimes they think if they send the money in after a demand has been made, that they can write on the check payment in full, and that works. And they don't understand that the law says that that doesn't work, and that according to the statute 718.116, they can write all that limiting language on the check they want, and it still gets applied first to late fees and interest, then to attorney's fees and costs, and then to the most delinquent maintenance. And sometimes, even just my assistant explaining that to someone, all of a sudden they make payment. Whereas if no one spoke to them and they didn't understand that, they put a hard line on it, and next thing you know, there's a lien, and next thing you know, there's a foreclosure lawsuit, and they've got $2,000 or $3,000 in attorney's fees and costs that have accrued. Whereas after maybe $200 in fees and costs, if they had just understood what they owed or the law or whatever the case may be, it would have been resolved. And frankly, when it gets resolved more amicably, they feel better about paying their future maintenance. They feel better about dealing with you as board members and as neighbors. And in fact, I do pride myself on the fact that typically unit owners